The coronavirus continues to haunt the entire planet, killing as it goes and wiping out businesses internationally and indiscriminately without a thought for the human race that it is attacking. There are many voices out there criticising what the government did, when it did it, why it did it, and asking if the measures taken were right, disproportionate, or just plain wrong. What I can tell you is this. On January the 14th of this year, the World Health Organization issued this tweet. Preliminary investigations conducted by the Chinese authorities have found no clear evidence of human-to-human transmission of the novel coronavirus identified in Wuhan. So there you have it. Is it any wonder that dozens of countries around the world did not react more quickly to this deadly threat? The very people that are supposed to safeguard our health and prevent dangerous viruses from spreading globally were actually absent and missing in action. And isn't it time we started admitting that the World Health Organization is simply not fit for purpose, not fit for this century, and not honest enough to call out China for its hideous practices when it comes to food and hygiene? And it gets worse, by the way, because only yesterday the Australian Prime Minister was critical of the World Health Organization because they basically said to China, go ahead and reopen your wet markets, just keep them clean. Donald Trump wants to withdraw funding from this ghastly, craven organisation, which is in the thrall of the Chinese Communist Party, and we should do the same. Once again, the President of the United States has absolutely got it right. Let's talk to our good friend Christopher Snowdon, Head of Lifestyle Economics at the IEA. Christopher, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning.
I think it's time, and I'm quite surprised at myself, and I sort of gave myself a verbal slapping this morning, that we haven't had a go at the World Health Organization yet. You know, all these journalists are out there busy having a go at the government, asking them why they didn't do this, why they didn't do that. You know, I've been checking back through the tweets and the advice from the WHO, and quite frankly, if they'd got it any more wrong, you know, they should all be in prison.
Yeah, they've mishandled it terribly. And to be fair, Donald Trump has mishandled it terribly. And in January and February, neither the WHO nor Trump displayed much competence whatsoever. And I think we can be honest about it and say that Trump's motivations for pulling this funding is they're not entirely pure. He's not motivated purely by a desire to clean up an international agency. He does want to deflect attention from...
That may be true, but let's face it. But let's face it. If you're the President of the United States, or indeed the Prime Minister of Great Britain, or indeed the Prime Minister of any other country, the government of any other country, you're going to be guided by the science. That's what we keep hearing. And if the World Health Organization says, for example, in January, that it doesn't pass from human to human, you're going to think, OK, well, let's not get carried away here. Let's not think that we're all going to go to hell in a handcar. And then after that, they then issue another ridiculous statement in which they basically say that, there's no need to overreact to this situation. And it really is time. There is no reason for measures that unnecessarily interfere with international travel and trade. We call on all countries to implement decisions that are evidence-based and consistent. The World Health Organization stands ready to provide advice to any country that is considering which measures to take. That message timed at 7:48 p.m. January the 30th. So we're already at the end of January, and they're still saying, effectively, no need to lock anything down.
Yeah, and they continued saying that for some time. And one of the few things Trump did get right in January, February, was introducing the travel ban on people flying in from China and Europe. And the WHO criticised that, said it would create fear and stigma.
Yeah.
They seem obsessed with preventing any kind of fear and stigma, mainly, presumably, towards Chinese people. I'm not sure that was ever a credible problem in the first place. So the only thing Trump got right, the WHO criticised. And the important thing to remember is this is not a sort of one-off failure by the WHO. Most people don't pay a lot of attention to these kind of organizations in normal times. I do. I've been following them for years. I've watched how they behave, their unaccountability, kicking journalists out of conferences, putting out anonymous briefings, highly political material.
Yeah.
They're obsessed with political correctness. They're obsessed with nanny states trivia, frankly. They need to get back to focusing on their core mission, which is tackling and eradicating infectious diseases.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, over the last 15 years or so, they've become very distracted by the obsessions of public health campaigners in the West, while millions of people continue to die of contagious and tropical diseases in developing countries.
Yeah, exactly right. Now, it seems to me that the World Health Organization is a sort of medical equivalent of FIFA. How exactly is it put together, and how exactly is it run? Because it's a kind of secret organisation to me as well.
Well, yeah, it is. It's not very transparent, and it is unaccountable. it has various different divisions, and I think a lot of those need stripping away because, as I say, it needs to be focused entirely on infectious diseases. And countries give it various, hugely varying amounts of money, and the USA is by far its biggest funder. Actually, on a per capita basis, Britain's its biggest funder.
Yeah.
We're its second biggest, member state funder, and a lot of countries contribute hardly anything. And if you combine the contributions of France, Spain, Italy, Finland, and Ireland, you get less than 5% of what the USA puts in. So all these people complaining today about what Trump's doing are free riders. And we should remind them that the WHO is more than happy to accept donations. If people want to dip their hands in their pocket, they can help make up some of the shortfall. But there's no reason why the USA should be carrying the rest of the world on this. And also, finally, there is actually a more targeted agenda here than a lot of people realize.
Yeah.
It hasn't got much media attention, but a few days ago, the U.S. House of Congress wrote a letter to the WHO demanding, essentially it was a freedom of information request. They were demanding to see correspondence between WHO and China and various other bodies.
Right.
And I think that what Trump's done yesterday is to give that a bit of impetus and make sure that the WHO responds. I think probably in the long run, the WHO will get its money from America. But you've got to have a little bit of gumbo diplomacy in these things because the WHO will simply not change unless it sees the money drying up.
It's incredible, isn't it? And as far as the way it's constituted, I mean, where is it based? Who's in charge of it? How does it pick its kind of officers? Are they health-driven or are they diplomat-driven? And how much money are they all making? Because I can imagine that there's many people in the WHO on six-figure salaries.
Yeah, well, it's highly political. The current Director General is Dr. Tedros, who's from Ethiopia. He's the first African Director General. And when he took over from Margaret Chan, who was really dreadful, there was some hope that because he was from Africa, the WHO would return to looking and concentrating on infectious diseases in Africa and developing countries. But that really hasn't happened, and he's shown the same kind of obsession with vaping and drinking and sugary drinks as his predecessor did. It's based in Geneva, like a lot of these organizations. It's part of the United Nations.
Yeah, exactly. And the United Nations is already in very much the thrall of China, very much in the debt of the United States of America. And in previous times, other presidents other than Donald Trump have refused to give them money. I think it was George Bush, I think, that said he was going to withhold funding to the UN. So it's this kind of this huge cartel of kind of, uselessness that goes on. The United Nations completely useless in stopping wars. The United Nations completely hopeless when it comes to, worldwide pandemics, completely useless when it comes to international refugee crises. How much longer are we going to have to put up with these ridiculously overburdened bodies who have got too many people working for them, who don't even pay their parking tickets because they think they're diplomats, who can get away with raping women in New York City and not being prosecuted for it? I mean, I'm really getting fed up with these people.
Yeah, and the UN special rapporteurs who pop over to Britain every now and again.
And tell us that we're a third
one of the poorest countries in the world. Yeah,
I mean, I'm literally sick to death of these bozos.
Yeah, and this is why I think that reform in practice is probably pretty unlikely, even if there was a will to do it. I think, unfortunately, you've got to kind of start again with some of these organizations. They all start off with the best of intentions, and the WHO has done some fantastic work over the years. We should be very clear about that, eradicating smallpox and so on. But it seems to be the case with these kind of institutions that partly because they lack democracy and transparency, they just become more and more political and move further and further away from their original agenda. I see no real reason, once this is all over, why a kind of rival organization to the WHO couldn't be set up. If America starts putting money into something fresh and new that's focusing entirely on infectious diseases, and other countries start putting money in there, WHO can carry on going on about what the correct words to use for different flus and complaining about people vaping, while this other organization can get on with saving lives.
Yeah, exactly right. So as far as the Trump promise to not give them any money, I mean, presumably if he stops giving them money, they will continue for a while. But what will they actually do?
Well, they would continue doing what they're doing at the moment, which is handling the occasional pandemic rather badly and spending a huge amount of time complaining about what they call non-communicable diseases, and campaigning for sugar taxes and advertising bans on vaping, or indeed total bans on vaping.
Yeah.
It's a nanny state stuff. Is the reason I've been following so much over the last 10 years, and they're obsessed with it in a different way as I am.
Yes. Aren't they the same guys that have come up with this ludicrous figure of 40,000 people dying every year from pollution in London?
Yeah, I think that was them. I'm not 100% sure, but I would think so. One of the issues with the WHO when it comes to research is that so much of it's anonymous. When I talk about lack of transparency, it goes right all the way up to the research documents.
Yeah.
You don't even know really who's working for them or who's writing their material.
Yeah, it's really quite extraordinary, isn't it? That one of the things that I think will be good and may come out of this coronavirus nonsense and ghastliness is that we've learned an awful lot more about an awful lot of organisations, an awful lot of people, an awful lot of politicians, and the way that the world actually works that we kind of never thought about before. But because we've now got the time to look at everything, we're actually beginning to realise there's quite a lot of things wrong with the way the world works.
Yes, it is a sort of silver lining, if you like. I've been trying for several years to get people interested in WHO because I do think it's very similar to FIFA, actually.
Yes.
And it took a long time for the truth to come out about FIFA. And if you want to use a sort of footballing analogy, when all that stuff came out about FIFA a few years ago, and it was beyond dispute that Russia and Qatar had basically stolen those World Cups, there was a window of time in which if the Premier League and La Liga had refused to let their players out, if Brazil and Argentina had said, we're not going to go to these World Cups, then the whole thing would have fallen apart.
Right.
And FIFA would have been replaced by a new clean agency that could put on the same events just as well, but without the corruption.
Yes.
That window of opportunity was not grasped. And that's why I think, although people are complaining about Donald Trump doing it now and saying it's the worst possible time in the middle of the pandemic, and so on, the reality is this pandemic will eventually end.
Yes.
And people will go back to ignoring organisations like the
and
World
also,
Health Organization.
I mean, if the World Health Organization ceased to exist right now at 10/19/05 on Wednesday, April the 15th, would anybody actually notice? I don't know what they do. It's not like they're stopping the coronavirus from spreading. It's not like they're giving aid and succour to any particular country. They're just talking.
Well, to be fair, in Africa and some of the poor countries, they are actually doing some frontline work, and it's a poor countries like that that do need the help of the WHO and do need foreign aid and so on. The question is whether the WHO is best placed to do that, whether the amount of money that we give them is being properly used, and we can get more bang for a buck if it was somebody else doing it.
Yeah, but I mean, perversely, some of the countries that are going to end up being worst hit are those very countries, because you probably have seen as same as I have, places like India where there's millions of poor people, places in Africa where there's millions of poor people who are not just living very close to each other, but who are also quite suspicious of any kind of, officialdom, and who are not willing to do the social distancing that we're all doing. They are going to be wiped out if they continue to operate like that. And so what the hell is the World Health Organization doing for them?
It's a huge worry, obviously, that this disease is just going to go through places like India and Asia, like a dose of salt.
Right.
Touch wood, it hasn't happened yet, actually, and it's been remarkable how slow the progress of the disease has been in these areas, and we can only hope that it continues for whatever reason.
Absolutely. Christopher, thank you very much indeed. Christopher Snowdon there, Head of Lifestyle Economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs. I'm sick to death of the World Health Organization. I don't think they do anything that is worth a fag end. If somebody could tell me that what they do is of any use to man or beast, then I'd be more than happy to hear from you. But as far as I can see, it is just another quango. It is just another world global organization fitted up by those planks at the United Nations who are also useless and who do nothing for the good of the common man and the common woman in this world. I think we should stop funding them right now. I think Donald Trump is entirely correct. And I also think that the US Attorney's Office should do exactly what they did with FIFA and start investigating these criminals at the World Health Organization and start arresting them in Switzerland or wherever the hell they hang out and start locking them up, because they are a bigger danger than the coronavirus. This is Talk Radio.